going to have a look at some regular corneas, and the first one we're going to have a look at is mine. That's me. You'll remember my friend Ros from Central London. She took these images of me way back in, well, that was 2013 that she took these images, and these were very deliberate. There was a good reason for taking these images. We were doing an exercise on assessment of contact lenses with a corneal topographer with the pre-lens tear film in mind. And this is me. These are my topographies with contact lenses in situ. And I was deliberately wearing two different types of high quality, single use, silicone hydrogel spherical contact lenses. You can all see that I'm myopic. I'm around about a -4. And on my right eye, you'll see here that I have quite a severe disruption of my tear film. You can see these high points where it's a little bit orange. You can see the low points. This is a very disrupted tear film. On the left eye, and I want you to ignore this red line for a moment, you can see that across visual axis, and I hasten to add, I've got rather a large pupil there. That's about a 4.5 millimeter pupil there. Across visual axis, this is very, very smooth. Now, the interesting part of this particular exercise is that as a patient, I wasn't particularly aware of any difference in either comfort or vision between the two products. But in reality, if you showed these images to me and said, right, which product do you want? I'll say this one straight away. It's very easy to assess. The red band that you see here, bear in mind, I think this was a -4.25, this contact lens. This is the edge of the optic zone. This is where the lens comes back in, and you can see there's a tiny little bit of temporal decentration here. Now, on a spherical lens with a millimeter or so of decentration, this wouldn't necessarily matter. But the next image is very interesting. This is one of my colleagues from the hospital, and she's wearing spherical soft contact lenses. You can see that both contact lenses decenter slightly temporally, and that's in keeping with our Victorian friends back in 1889. They knew all about this. And on the right eye, I'm not overly concerned about that little bit of temporal decentration, but you can see on the left eye, there's not only temporal decentration, but there's inferior decentration as well. And this is very, very easy to measure over the top of contact lenses in situ. And we can calculate any unwanted prismatic effect simply from the mathematics of this movement. Now, again, on a spherical contact lens, this may not matter too much, but if we were fitting lenses in multifocal form, or for that matter, and much more importantly, if this was a myopia control lens with concentric optic zones, this would be a very, very important factor to take into consideration. So this is a very, very valuable tool in our regular non-hospital environments. And finally, this was a colleague of mine. This was an optometrist. I was fascinated by this particular ocular condition. He had an irregular cornea on his left eye. This is his left eye topography without a contact lens, and we can see again this subclinical level of keratoconus. This is keratoconus at a very, very low level. And he'd fitted himself with a contact lens. This is a spherical 2-weekly replacement contact lens. It's a -6.5, and we can see quite a heavy optic zone transition here. We can see a small amount of decentration. But he got 6.6 through this, through his left eye, and he was very, very happy with it. His right eye, demonstrated a more moderate level of keratoconus. You can see here we've got a moderate level of keratoconus, inferior cone, which starts to interfere with his vision. This is certainly on visual axis. Now, the image you see here is a soft toric contact lens. This is a 2-weekly replacement contact lens, and you can see the edges of the toric fitting zones here. But look what's happened to his level of keratoconus. We can see here very, very clearly indeed that the degree of keratoconus hasn't gone away with this contact lens in situ, but it's certainly reduced to a very, very acceptable standard. Now, if we go right back to the beginning where we were screening a patient who was fully unaware of her keratoconic condition because vision was very adequate, this is a very, very similar situation. So our optometrist friend has managed to fit himself almost with regular mainstream soft contact lens and correct his keratoconus to a very, very acceptable level. And he was fascinated by these images because it proved to him the mathematics of why he got good vision with conventional soft contact lenses, and why in this instance there was no necessity for rigid contact lenses of any type. Now, our final patient, and this was one of the most fascinating patients that I'd seen, was in my dry eye clinic. This is an image of a patient who was referred to me with very poor vision, but also very poor comfort. This was a patient in his it was a male, and he was in his mid 50s. And you can see here, he's got a 3mm pupil here. But you can see he has quite an unpleasant dystrophy going on here. This is very, very uncomfortable, but this is also very disturbing visually. You can see that the upper lid is having this unpleasant effect on the cornea, and you can probably see on here the irregularity on the lower lid margin, which needed some immediate attention too. Now, just 1 month later, this was 5 weeks later, this is how his cornea appeared. So we still had a little bit of something going on here. And if we just drop back one, you can see that we've made a considerable improvement on the ocular surface. He was delighted and disappointed at the same time. And he asked me, how much difference have you made to my eye? So I was able then to put the two images side by side. We can see the first image on the top here and the latter one. If you look carefully at the dates, this was 26th of July 17, and the second image was 30th of August 17. So this was just over 1 month between the two. And what we see on the right-hand side here is what we call a difference map. This is the computer subtracting one image from the other. And I was able to take the cursor from this central point here. This is the geometric center here. And I just pop the cursor on this high zone, or this elevated zone here. And I was able to measure the dioptric difference at that specific point. And the dioptric difference comes out down here as 6.35 diopters of difference. Now, I mentioned that the patient was delighted, but he was also disappointed at the same time. So I asked him about this. I said, why are you delighted? And he said, well, because you've used your modern technology to treat my condition, to assess my condition, to give me a visual image of this condition. So I said, well, that's great, but why are you disappointed? And he said to me, in his previous practice, they had an instrument that looked like a telescope, and they took an image, which he couldn't see, and they told him that his eye was reasonably okay. And he said to me, why don't they have this technology in every practice? And that was an answer. That was an answer that I couldn't give him. But there lies the difference between the limitations of a keratometer and the applications of a computerized corneal topographer. And I'm very grateful to my friend and colleague, Professor James Wolfson from Aston University here in the UK, and he wrote an editorial for the BCLA journal back in 2017. And the question he asked was that in an age of technological excellence, should the keratometer not be consigned to the optical dark ages? Should we only use keratometers as a museum piece to remind us of a darker time? So that's where I'm going to finish, really. But we've not touched on one aspect of corneal topography, which I think was my main reason for exploring the instrument, and that is orthokeratology. So I'm going to finish now with a slide which amuses me a little bit. It was taken some years ago at the University of Manchester, and it was a vague attempt at 1 hour's orthokeratology. And this is our final image. This is what I call a very happy cornea. And my belief is that corneal topography really does represent the end of the dark ages, and is that light